and the rest of you can act intelligent for Ben. So Ben, happy birthday, buddy.
Yes.
Hey, thanks.
So Pastor Lee, let's go. Lead him in happy birthday.
Oh,
Lead us in
my.
happy birthday. Come on.
Ready?
Yep.
Happy birthday
To
to you.
you.
Come on.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dr. Ben. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
That had to be the worst birthday song I've ever heard.
I
works
just,
better when Voices of Lee does it.
yeah, I just don't know how they do that all on the computer when they all have the great choirs and all of that. Obviously, I'm not on that. That's why they're able to do that.
It's a sync.
Obviously, we're not there.
No, we're not there.
Yeah, we're not there. That's why. That's correct. So, Ben, thank you for coming on, especially on your birthday. That's very generous of you. But what else are you going to be doing, right?
That's right. It's raining, so there's nothing else to do.
So, you know, I started doing this last week and having guests come on. You're my second guest. I told Phil you were going to be my first, and he felt bad about that, so I squeezed him in last week just to make him feel better. So, Ben, a lot of people may be on here. I think most of us know who you are, but there's some that may not know who you are. So just kind of fill us in on who Dr. Ben Carnahan is.
Well, not a doctor yet. Full disclosure there.
Okay.
We got a couple weeks.
Well,
Got my medical license in the mail a couple days ago, but I don't have the MD, so we're
then
close.
you're a doctor then.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
But my name's Ben Carnahan. I am the son of the one that says iPhone down there, Jim and Debbie. I was born and raised in North Apollo Church of God, and so I was continued to be a active member there in different ways until I moved out here to Hershey in 2016 for medical school, pursuing my medical degree, obviously. And I'll be moving back to the area and a little over a month now to start working as a physician at St. Margaret.
That's awesome. So how long have you been away at school?
So I've been out here since July of 2016. So almost 4 years now.
Okay. And then you were at St. Vincent, right? Before that.
I was at 4 years at St. Vinny. Yeah.
And so how many years of residency do you have?
So my residency, I'll be going into family medicine. I want to do be a small town doc. And so
we're looking for a good doctor. There's no good doctor in town here. I shouldn't say that. I don't know the doctor, so.
I don't know. If I know you'll be walking into my clinic, I might have to consider where I want to work, though. So. Got to be careful the patient population at the same time. So.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, I'm going to be going into family medicine, so it'll be a 3-year residency.
Okay. Good. So you spent most of your adult life in school.
All of it.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's great. I mean, you've disciplined yourself and applied yourself, and I know your parents are proud of you, and we are too, for what you're accomplishing, and what, you know, you've been in our prayers and things. So just kind of, I'm going to let you go wherever you want to go, but just kind of ask you some questions, get it going, you know. So talk some about your faith journey. And you know, how your faith is shaping your learning and preparedness for becoming a doctor, and how you think that might impact the way you practice medicine, and just wherever you want to go with it, really, Ben.
Sure. So I guess in terms of my faith journey, going kind of from the beginning. So, you know, like I said before, I was born and raised at North Apollo, and so I was kind of piggybacking on the faith that my parents had as a child, as you know, a lot of young Christians do. And I accepted Christ in the front seat of my dad's pickup truck. I don't remember exactly how old I was. He would know, but in the front seat on the way home from a Wednesday night service from church. And I remember doing that and praying in the front seat of the truck with him. And then we actually got baptized together by Pastor Lee back to back, which was really cool. So a lot of my faith growing up, you know, it was really entangled in the faith that my parents had. And it wasn't until later on in my life, whenever I joined the youth group. At that point, Pastor Kevin wasn't a part of our staff yet, and I was really mentored by a lot of the youth leaders that we had there. And at that point, that's really when I started making my faith my own. I kind of took up some leadership roles within the youth group, just as along with the other guys. And I learned a lot from my dad and his influence in frontline ministries, and learned pretty early on that I love to be in that type of role. And I love to have that kind of mentorship relationship with those around me, and especially other men. I think that is just such an essential thing for a man to have, the fellowship of, you know, both men and women, but especially the fellowship that they get from other men. And so my faith kind of became my own whenever I was in the youth group and whatnot, especially through, you know, we had Kevin Moorhead at that time, who's no longer at our church, and Kelly Ekman and Gary Kaiser, and, you know, just a lot of those, you know, strong male influences in the youth group that just did so much for me to help, you know, really challenge me to kind of step out of the shadow of my parents and their faith, as strong as it was. And not that that was a problem, but, you know, make my relationship with Christ to be my own relationship with him. And so that's really where it came, where it kind of started there. And I learned early on from my parents that the importance of just trusting in Christ and just trusting in his plan, and just allowing him to lead me, and not to kind of just force my own hand, but allow Christ to kind of pick the plan for me. And that's kind of how I ended up in medicine. So growing up, I actually kind of thought that I would be an engineer like my dad. And then I kind of saw the light and realized that I definitely didn't like math like he does. And, you know, a common topic at our dining room table whenever I was growing up was surface tension. And I think that was one of the really big red flags when I realized that probably wasn't something I want to be talking about all the time. But now I realize that medicine is actually even worse to talk around a dining room table. But
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I started realizing that I always knew that I liked fixing things. I always knew that it was something that I got a lot of pleasure out of, you know, taking things that my dad and I would have in the workshop, or working on the cars, and just seeing something that was broken and just having the opportunity to kind of restore it. And I realized that I can do that through medicine, and that the restoration process that we all go through is not you know, just physical, but the restoration process can be emotional, it can be spiritual as well. And I realized that as a physician, I would have the ability to, you know, play a part in all of those different types of restoration in the lives of the patients that I come in contact with. And so along the way, I obviously had some challenges. You know, school was hard, but I think that the best part about it was, now that I can look back on it, knowing that, you know, my schooling is coming to a close finally, my bank accounts and my student loans will be happy that those are done. But I realized that my story is really more about just learning about how to trust Christ. You know, I got into St. Vincent, and I got I knew I wanted to go to Penn State for medical school, and I actually didn't get in right away at Penn State. I originally was waitlisted whenever I applied to try to get an interview. So I was waitlisted for interview, and I got my interview on the very last day of their interviewing season, actually. And then I found out the result actually on my birthday that year, or the day before, because I was actually planning. My dad's birthday was yesterday, so just so you guys know.
Happy birthday there, Cool Breeze.
Thank you.
And I remember that my plan was to, I thought, you know, that, you know, God got me that interview and I was waited so long for it. So of course he was going to allow me to get accepted. And so my plan was to, you know, take the acceptance letter and frame it and give it to my dad as a present for his birthday. And then I got waitlisted after I interviewed. And I ended up getting accepted to Penn State 2 weeks before classes started. And so, you know, there was a lot of scrambling, but looking back now, I realized that throughout this entire process, not only getting into medical school, but also in medical school, my faith journey was really about learning to trust Christ throughout it all. From the beginning to the end, that's that's really what it all came down to.
Cool. So let me say this before you go on. You know, it's good to hear the impact your parents had on you and your faith, and they're great people. We love them to death. You know, they've had effective ministries on all of us, and with our, you know, Jim with my son, you know, well, I guess Laura's too. You know, and Deb, what you're doing now in your ministries, you guys have always been involved, and it's got to be rewarding to know that you're impacting lives, but then your children are following, you know, that example and living that life. And you guys want to say anything to your son today before you?
Well, happy birthday, son.
Hey,
Wish you
thanks.
were here.
I already called you. I'm the good mom.
Yeah, well, he texted me early, actually. So.
Yeah, I just got done working probably about 15 minutes ago. But no, we're just extremely proud of him. I think that, you know, certainly proud of the accomplishments that he's made, but more proud of the man he's become, his genuine faith. I mean, somebody told me once our kids are the finest work we'll ever do, and I truly believe that. And, you know, to have your child accept Christ in that front seat of the pickup truck, he was probably about 7 years old. That's what really matters to me. You know, I really don't care what profession he would pick, as long as he do it to the best of his abilities and be centered up in Christ. And I'm just thankful God's using him in medicine. And, you know, as we prayed before he started medical school, you know, Christ is the great physician. His hands are just to help. And I think Ben really just carried that spirit throughout the whole journey so far. And certainly hope you continue to do that, son, when you practice.
Yeah. So Ben, some people probably don't know this, but you had you were a Christian Sports International counselor for a while,
That's
right?
right. Yep.
So talk about that a little bit.
So that was probably the coolest thing I've ever done. So for many of you guys probably don't know what that is. So Christian Sports International is a nonprofit organization out in Zelienople that the main mission is to share the love of Jesus Christ with kids in Western Pennsylvania and truly across the nation at this point now. And they do it in a lot of different ways. Of course, you know, the middle word there is sports. So their primary mode of reaching out to kids is different sports ministries. So we have baseball, we have some football camps, and they have a basketball program also now, and they're starting BMX, which is kind of cool too. But I worked as a counselor for the baseball camps. Actually, Phil got me my job there. After a baseball game at St. Vincent, he came up to me whenever he was coaching at Geneva and offered me a job. But yeah, I worked there for 6 years actually on staff, and it was great. It's really where I fell in love with kids, and I fell in love with working with kids especially. I had the chance to see some of the same kids came, you know, every single year. So I got, you know, to be Coach Ben for 6 straight years for some of these kids and watch them grow, and most of them grow taller than me in the process. And it was just a neat experience to share my faith with them, but more importantly, to use the game of baseball, something that means so much to me, but to use the game of baseball to teach life lessons and just teach about the love of Christ. So I'm actually in the process of, now that I'll be coming back in the Pittsburgh area, I'm in the process of kind of getting back into CSI and, you know, getting my foot back in the door within the ministry to see the ways that I can, you know, make an impact there, not only as, you know, a follower of Christ, but now as a soon-to-be physician. So it'll be exciting to see where God leads now that I'm home.
Good. I didn't realize, I knew you were there for a couple of years. I didn't realize it was 6 years. They're actually, you talked about the BMX that they're starting. They actually asked me to run that because my expertise in no, not really. So, okay. So how long you been married now?
I've been married for 1.5 years.
And how's that going?
It is fantastic.
Good answer, buddy. Good answer.
Well, it was a lot easier whenever, you know, she has a super strong foundation in Christ, not only her own faith, but, you know, her family is very similar to mine in that she has really strong Christian parents. And so, you know, we were also together for 8.5 years before we got married. So we knew each other really well. So it worked really well.
Right. Good. So tell us a little bit about her.
Cassie.
Yeah.
So Cassie is from Clarion area. She's from Sligo, a little town outside of Clarion, and she is she's 2 years younger than me, and so I guess I kind of robbed the cradle there, but it was a good job for me. But she is the most amazing person I've ever met. She is a registered nurse, and she works in the children's hospital out here. She has a heart that really reminds me of my mom's. She loves every single person, and she doesn't care what you say to her. She's still going to love you. And so I knew that whenever I was going to find my future wife, I needed to find someone who had a heart like my mom did. And I found that for sure. And she's a wonderful person, but more so than just the influence that she has in general in my life, she's a spiritual warrior for me. And, we take time, we pray together, we share everything with each other. And she's my rock. It's really cool to be married to your best friend, but also your accountability partner at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just know that this is being recorded. You can send a copy of this to your wife.
Sounds good.
And every Mother's Day, you can play this for your mom too.
That's right. You heard that, Mom. I don't have to get a Mother's Day present anymore, right?
So hey, Ben, anything particular? I'm going to let people ask you some questions and things. And anything particular you want to share before I do that, or?
I don't think I have anything major. I just want to thank you guys. First of all, I know that I guess one thing I could share, and I've shared this with you on the phone whenever you asked me to do this, is that I know that I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for my church family. Anytime I had a test or I had a major event, there's a lot of board exams. There's a lot of exams you have to take in medical school. Even, I went through a lot of interviews before I ended up, going to St. Margaret. But all of those major events, I knew that my mom was going to post about it on Facebook for you guys to know about it. And I knew that my dad was going to text a bunch of the frontline guys. And so I knew every single time that I was hit with one of those obstacles along the way, that I had an absolute huge army of people that were praying for me. And I think what was really neat is I felt that, and I can honestly say I did. I would go into, I sat in these exam rooms, these testing centers where everything's quiet and neat, and it's really, anxiety provoking to walk and sit there for 9 hours in a testing center. And, the people around me that would be freaking out, which I'll admit, of course, I was freaking out every other day before that. But I would wake up in the morning and I would get there and I had a sense of peace. It was just a weird, I felt a sensation that came over to me. My heart wasn't racing. I just felt calm, and a sense of calmness that I never really felt before. And I would sit down, I would take my test, and I would walk out. And of course, then I would, collapse, wondering what would happen. But, I knew in the moment that I was peaceful, and that I know that came from just the tons of prayers that you guys were just pouring out to Christ on my behalf. And so I want to thank you guys for that, because, this accomplishment is not just mine. It's my parents, it's my wife, and it's all of you guys, because I wouldn't have been able to do this without your help. That's for sure. So I just want to thank you guys.
Well, you are welcome. That's very gracious of you to say that, especially, how much you love your senior pastor. That's fantastic.
That's right. Yeah. He's not paying me to be here. Although I do take check, credit, Venmo. I take them all.
Laura has a Venmo account, so I don't, but she can send it to you there. So what I want to do, Ben, is I'm going to open this up for questions and things, and we'll see where it goes. I put in a disclaimer in the email that I sent out and on the post that this is not an opportunity to get free medical advice. We don't want, if Ben says go drink some Clorox, that you're not all going to go do that. So hey, Ben, whatever questions you feel comfortable answering, you go ahead and do that. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, say, Pastor Bob. Okay. So however you want to divert it, that's fine.
Yeah.
So
I'm open to, you guys know me, I'm an open book. So.
I know you are. And it's so good to reconnect with you here and let other people do that as well. It's been one of the great blessings of one of the COVID things. caused us to think of new avenues, and God's led us to do this, and we're grateful you're part. So go ahead, folks. Fire away.
Hey, Ben,
Yes.
this is Larry Roberts talking. Excuse me. Hey, have you picked out your primary practice yet? What, your specialty? What, are you going to do that at all?
So I'll be going into family medicine. I'll be working at St. Margaret for the next 3 years, and I'll be at the hospital primarily, but I'll be working in the clinic as well, and I'll be at actually the clinic in New Kensington. We have a couple different options there as residents there's 3 different clinic locations that you can work at, but I chose to work at the New Ken Clinic, which is the one right beside the police office there, if anyone knows New Ken.
Yes.
It's attached to it. But I'll be working there because that was the closest as I could get to Apollo in the hometown, and I knew I went into this to kind of serve the hometown. So you'll see me there in New Ken starting in July. So
Great. And just a comment, Trey, our grandson, has decided to go into medicine, so I'm sure he'll be
that's awesome.
asking you for advice.
Yeah, and if anyone, if any of you guys have, if you have anyone that's interested in medicine, or niece, nephew, sons, daughters, grandchildren interested in medicine, I can share my email address, and you guys are absolutely welcome to share that with them if they have questions or just want to kind of know how the process goes, because there's a lot of different moving parts. And so it's kind of nice to hear that from somebody who's in the process instead of just reading it online. So if you guys if you're interested in that, you can actually chat down here at the bottom of this if you didn't notice that. So you guys are welcome to let me know, and I can share that information with you guys.
Thanks, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else? Boy, you can't.
It's
It's okay to not have questions.
Yeah.
Ben, where are you planning on living? Are you going to be in the Apollo area?
So we are, now that real estate's finally allowed to open back up, we will be hopefully living in not too far away from New Ken, actually, since that's the clinic I'll be at. So New Ken, Lower Burrell area. That's the plan. Not too far away from the hospital, and my wife will be working at Children's. So.
Good, that's wonderful. Well, maybe you can get in the Lower Burrell area, be near Monica.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ben, was your wife able to just transfer from Children's out there, or did she have to go through a whole new process?
So she has to go through the process. Yeah, since it's a different health system. She's actually still in the process right now. They kind of put everything on hold. So she interviewed, and then they put everything on hold right after she interviewed because of the coronavirus. So she's still waiting to hear back what's going to happen with that. But thankfully, she wouldn't have to start until July either. So they already told her that she was ahead of the game. So I don't think she'll have any trouble there.
That's good.
Fun to get her there.
Ben, this is a hot topic, and maybe this will be one you might say, I don't think I can answer that. But the topic is abortion. And I just wondered what the discussion is among the medical students, what they're being taught, challenging, what's challenging about that, anything you could say at that issue.
Yeah, so it's obviously a topic that comes up in medical school. And in terms of we learn about it. So we learn more of the science behind it. So we don't actually view it from an ethical standpoint. They're not really allowed to teach it from that standpoint. We learn it just from the medical knowledge behind it. So, what it is, how it's conducted, when it's appropriate in terms of just the physiological purposes behind it and whatnot. So, we learn the medicines that are done to do it, and but we're not actually allowed to be a part of them in our clinical rotations unless we specifically request. So, so I obviously, with my faith, I was against it. So I didn't get a chance to be a part of any of those during medical school, but some of my colleagues that have different perspectives on that were able to. But they don't push one side or the other because, there's a lot of ethical, dilemmas, or there's a lot of debates within medical topics, right? But my thing is, I'm graduating as a physician. And so no matter what the the standpoint is from, whatever political party or whatever religion, it's still my job to know what it is. And it's still my job to know what medical marijuana is, what abortions are, and how to do them, because, I owe it to my patients to be able to have everything in my repertoire. Whether I actually utilize that in my practice or not is up to my own decision making. But I owe it to them to at least know enough about it that if I have a patient that is interested in that, I owe it to them to be able to refer them to somebody who ethically feels like that's okay to do. But morally, I don't have to do that myself.
Yeah. Thank you.
So everybody's quiet all of a sudden. So Ben, what's been your exposure to the COVID thing and your take on things as far as you want to get into it?
Yeah, sure. So, I will tell you that not everything you see on the press releases are true. Of
You're
course.
kidding me.
So just want to make sure that we are all aware of that. And not everything that you see on Facebook, surprisingly, is true as well.
No.
If only the rest of America knew that, we'd be a much better place.
Yes.
But there's a lot of discussion, of course, and there's a lot of different topics within the coronavirus that you could talk about. But from my standpoint as a soon-to-be provider, I think that the best thing that we can do as a society is we just need to respect it. A lot of people are not giving the virus the respect that it deserves. And a lot of that is driven just by political party, both sides, truly, not just one side. And just the problem with it is that no matter what side of the political spectrum you align, you're at risk for coronavirus, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, or whether you're on the Tea Party. It doesn't matter what you are and what you vote, you're still at risk for coronavirus. And so I think we owe it to everybody in our country to stand in solidarity and recognize the threat that it is, and to be appropriately prepared, but also to trust the experts and just trust in what, the way that God is moving in this. I think, I've seen a lot of discussion, especially in, from the religious standpoint about, praying it away. And, I'm a firm believer in the power of prayer, of course, but I'm also a firm believer in epidemiology and the power of a virus. And so we absolutely need to be in constant prayer about this. But I think that, as much as praying about it doesn't allow you to not respect it and what it truly can do. So we can pray about it with our masks on. We can pray about it whenever we're 6 feet away from each other. And that's the way we should be praying about it. No matter how we do it, I think it's important to remember that the church is not the actual structure. It's not the actual building, but it's the people themselves. So, the church is still happening whether we're in the building or not. So we can still pray, we can still worship, we can still, have the freedom to do the things we need to do. But we need to make sure that we're paying the proper respect to the virus and the threat it is to our health by wearing the mask, by staying apart as hard as it is, and just truly just being smart about the entire process. Thankfully, I have yet to see anyone in my immediate family or anyone that I actually even know with coronavirus, and I'm thankful for that. But we see every day that there are a lot of people that aren't as lucky, and so for some people, it doesn't really hit home how damaging it can be until somebody in their family gets it. But we don't want that to happen. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that we need to continue to pray about it, and we need to continue to ask Christ to lead us in the right direction and to help get rid of this virus. But we also need to be realistic in the fact that it's not going to disappear tomorrow.
Preach it, brother. Preach it.
Ben,
we have a lot of people that think that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Have you seen any of the medical reports about the antibodies or how that's reacting yet? Are you seeing anything?
Yeah, so I've read a decent amount about that. Unfortunately, at this point, there is questionable evidence on both sides on whether getting the virus actually decreases your chances of getting, getting the virus again. And so the term we use in medicine is just re-exposure. So essentially, if you get, most of us know that if you get the chicken pox, you don't get the chicken pox again. That's typically how it works, but that's not the case at this point. We're not really sure if that's the case about coronavirus. So while there are testings saying that there's the antibodies against it, and that's the way it works, that's exactly what vaccines are. We give people, a small part of a virus, and the body develops antibodies, which are essentially the immune system things that just fight it. And so, we know that works, but we're not sure yet if that works about coronavirus. And the problem is that it's mutating, so it's changing its DNA a lot. And because of that, just because the antibodies work for one strain doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily work for every strain. So that's where the complications arise, not only in that, but also in making a vaccine, because we can only take our best guess. That's why we still get the flu sometimes whenever we get the flu shot. So hopefully, fingers crossed, but there's still a lot to be done. And I know that a lot of people are getting frustrated in the sense that, this all kind of came to light in December or, November, December, not really in, America until closer to January, February, and we don't have this stuff. But I think it's important to remember that in a normal situation, it takes years and years and years to come up with a vaccine and to come up with testing for a virus. And the scientific community has developed these things in 3.5 months. So just think about the progress that's been made in such a small amount of time. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It just might be a little bit longer tunnel than we all want.
We got lots to be thankful.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Somebody have their volume on?
Yeah, someone's got your volume up really high. We're getting echoes.
So it suddenly got echo.
It's Patty at the bottom there, because the green thing shows up whenever we talk.
How's that?
There we go. Muted it. Now we're good.
Ben, do they seem to think that the strain on the West Coast and the East Coast is different? They seem to react different.
So there's a lot of question on whether there are like super strains, essentially. So more severe strains of the virus than, some other people are getting, because, we have some people that, most people are going to get the virus and recover, and we know that. But we're seeing perfectly healthy young people get the virus that don't have any other conditions, and they're still dying. And so there is some question whether some strains are more deadly than others. But at this point, we don't know yet. That's kind of how most viruses go. There's, in general, people that are sick are obviously before they get the virus are going to be more at risk, when they get the virus. But, and that can be no matter which strain they get, but it's going to be hard to say, like I said, it's still really early. We don't really know. The fact that we know as much as we already do is actually pretty extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. And what we know could change.
Exactly. And it will change a lot of times. That's why we have press reports every day. Not just because he likes the ratings, it's because there's more research every day. So
Ben,
What was your hardest class?
Oh my, all of them. I think actually my hardest class was probably my obstetrics class. I'm not a fan of that area. It's something that I'll have to do in family medicine, but as a guy who likes sports medicine, the idea of childbirth was just, it wasn't the miracle that they made it out to be. So
Wait till you have yours.
No, and the problem is I know too much that when the time comes, I'm gonna be like, this is not gonna be pretty. So I remember I actually got to assist and actually do some deliveries myself, which was really, really cool, and some very brave mothers for a lot of reasons, also mostly because they let a med student deliver their baby. So I got to do 3 deliveries myself. I mean, I had the doctor's hands directly below mine, of course, so it's not like it was completely on my own. But yeah, it was hard because it was a topic that it was a an area of medicine that I wasn't interested in. So to stay motivated for an entire year or entire month was really tough, because I was like, okay, this is enough. Like, I know what it is. Let's move on, because directly after that, I had a month of pediatrics, which is something I'm really passionate about. So it was like, how do I stay motivated for this, knowing that I need that? So
Ashley
yeah, that was a tough one.
Ashley was born at a teaching hospital, and we kind of feel like that might be part of what's wrong with her. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, I know that I
Any
think the
of
one
you
thing
tell
that
her
I did
said
learn,
that, I'm going to deny it.
well, it's
Being
recorded,
Jake.
so
It is. It is. Oh, I'm a
I
big
will say that after being in a teaching hospital, I will, whenever the time comes, whenever my wife and I have our children, very, very long in the future, Mom, just so you know, you're gonna have to have Kimber have a couple more grandchildren before you get any from us. But I will not be having our baby at a teaching hospital, not because anything is wrong with it, but because I remember what it was like being that medical student in the room, and I don't want to do that to him.
You should be the mother with all those medical students.
Yeah, I don't think that's that's not an ideal situation.
You should be the husband and the father.
Because they have the hardest job.
Yeah,
Yes.
because they have it so rough.
Yeah, just feeding the wife ice chips the entire time is probably not the hardest job in the world. So,
Well, when they have a C-section and they tell you, Dad, you want to look? You want to look? It's
Don't
going to be
look.
your only chance. I looked. I can't get it out of my mind, and I almost fainted. And they put me on a stool, and it was terrible. So
Told
I
them to
know,
leave them alone, but they wouldn't listen.
I know my wife inside and out, baby. So.
but on to other topics.
Yeah,
Let's
Yeah.
move on. Yeah.
Ruth, you started this.
How about another one?
What was your favorite?
There we go. We'll do that one. That's a better question now, right? Yeah.
Yes.
My favorite was actually I'll tell you, going into my third year of medical school, I was pretty convinced that I was going to go into pediatrics. A lot of that was because of, my time at Christian Sports International. I knew that, kids were so much fun to work with, and I had a blast with the time I had to spend with them. But at the end of my third year of school, so just to kind of orient you, the first 2 years of medical school are all in the classroom. And that's whenever you're essentially studying from the moment you wake up until you go to bed, and it's really terrible, but you need to learn everything before you actually start working in the hospital, because that's the safe thing to do, of course.
Yeah, that's important.
That's important, yeah. And the third and fourth year of medical school are where you're in the hospital the entire time, rotating through different specialties and learning the clinical side of things and just applying what you learned. And so the end of my third year, my very last rotation was an underserved rotation. So I was at a very small family medicine clinic out near Lancaster. And that's how you say it, by the way. It's a kiss in the middle. So Lancaster, not Lancaster.
Yes.
But I was in a little clinic out in Lancaster, and it was really neat because they're like, oh, you're at the end of your third year medical school, you should know a lot, so we're just gonna let you run the clinic, and if you need us, we're in the basement at our offices. So I got to run a clinic by myself for a month, and that's actually when I fell in love with family medicine, because I had the chance to see a lot of cool things. I actually had a family that came in, and I saw the dad, and I did his annual physical on a Thursday and met him. And then Friday morning, Mom came in with all 3 kids. And so I got a chance to meet the first kid, and I gave him a shot in his shoulder because he needed a steroid shot because he hurt his shoulder playing football. The very next kid just had a checkup. And then the last kid was had some really, I actually had to do, with my first time doing this, I got to do birth control counseling, and the girl was 16 in a religious family. And so I was doing, contraceptive counseling while Mom was sitting in a chair right beside us, bawling her eyes out because she couldn't imagine that this was happening in her Catholic family. And then her mom actually had her wellness or her physical exam afterwards. So I got to do an exam and meet every single member of the family. And in the end, I realized that after talking to the mom that the girl, that I was doing the counseling on, this was something that was never of interest to her. She was just acting out. The one boy was also acting out. And we found out that it was really because mom and dad were on the verge of a divorce. And so I actually, in talking to the entire family, I learned that. And the other members of the family didn't realize that the trouble that it was causing within the kids. And so I learned that I was actually able to, I got him into family counseling and whatnot. And I don't know what ended up happening because my rotation ended, but I was able to provide really good care to those kids because I met their parents and because I got to learn about their parents. And because of that, I learned that, while I love kids, if I take care of their parents, I can do a lot better job taking care of the kids. And if I learn the kids, I can take a lot better job taking care of their parents. And that's when I fell in love with family medicine. And so that was absolutely my favorite rotation because it's when I finally, I remember coming home and I was just excited, and my wife, I came in and she had dinner ready and I sat down, and I don't even know if my dinner was cold by the time I was done talking because I was just spilling everything. I was like, this was awesome. I absolutely love this. I was like, Cassie, I think this is what I need to do. I don't think we need to go into pediatrics. And now I'm in family medicine. And a lot of that was, throughout the entire process, I know that my dad kept telling me, don't, just whatever rotation you're on, just make the most of it. Even if you don't like it, don't just look towards the next one. You're there, learn about it, make the most of it, and just move on to the next one. And by taking that perspective, I think that that's how God allowed me to really see my calling. And it was neat. It was really neat.
You have some very unique opportunities, and you will down the years you're in medicine to truly minister and make a difference. Ben.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're certainly going to be praying for you in all of that. If you can't find any office space, I think we can make some room in the church.
We'll look into it. I'm not opposed. I know that's, coming into medical school, I knew I wanted to come back home. So, we don't have a pediatrician in town. So I thought that's what I was going to do. I was going to be the pediatrician because we didn't have one. But family medicine sees kids every day. And, they were actually the first pediatricians before they made it a specialty. So it'd be cool.
Well, to have somebody qualified and learning like you are, and then to just have that faith, what a tremendous gift to the community, and to anybody that will come into your practice. So
thank you.
Any other questions or comments or?
Actually, I have a question that goes back to the abortion part. You said that there was a lot of ethical questions as far as between everybody, but was there from a scientific point of view, was there a question as far as when life begins?
That's a good question. So technically speaking, it is still a moral decision, and how a lot of it's viewed. From the scientific standpoint, typically it's viewed at the time of conception is whenever life begins. But despite the fact that that's a scientific view, that's not always viewed morally by some people. A lot of people think it's the time of birth. Some people give just a arbitrary just number of weeks, because there is a certain amount of weeks where the heartbeat starts. And so some people think that there's no life until the heart beats because life doesn't end until the heart stops beating. So I understand where that point of view is. So from a scientific standpoint, you can actually put it at multiple points. I don't think there's like a general consensus because everyone allows their own moral beliefs to kind of dictate what they determine what their scientific beliefs are. It makes it tough.
Yeah, isn't that kind of weird though? I mean, if it's science, it's science. So how does that, I'm just wondering how that plays in to a field that's supposed to be based on science,
Yeah, and it's not only that. We have a lot of, you would think that everything we do in science or in medicine is, everything we do is evidence-based. That's truly the approach that we're supposed to have. We do things based off of the research that's been done that told us that this is good or this is bad. But you'd be surprised that there's a lot of gray area between medicine and science in general. It's not only that, but we see gray area in terms of addiction. We see gray area in terms of understanding that. There's a lot of gray areas. You know, abortion is obviously a huge concept, but also end of life care. You know, science tells us whenever death is, but medicine also tells us whenever we think death occurs. So a lot of those big things like that, you know, even though science says this, sometimes it's viewed differently from a medical standpoint, just because, you know, we can't explain everything that way.
I guess that's why you're still practicing.
Exactly, and that's the big thing, you know. You know, people that are in medicine, we're practicing medicine. We're not perfecting medicine, because that's truly what it is. Every single day you learn more, and you know, practice makes perfect, of course, but in medicine, there's no such thing as perfect. So every day we're learning more by doing the art of medicine. So, you know, unfortunately, we'll never know all the answers, but we're going to try.
That's what my grandfather always said. That's why they call it medical practice.
Yes. We
And
are
I
practicing.
I liked what you said, Ben. That makes perfect sense about getting to know the parents and the whole family, because that's part of the practicing. Because there are outward things that can affect physical things in our body, like you said, divorce in that case or whatever. So I really like your approach. You're going to be a great doctor.
Well, thank you. I think it's important to know that, you know, the body is one thing, but the mind is something else. And I think that a lot of times in medicine, we don't recognize that, and we don't recognize the impact that the mind can have, you know, on the rest of the body. You know, a great example is blood pressure. A lot of people have high blood pressure because genetically they just have high blood pressure, or maybe they just eat too much salt. You know, that's what every doctor tells you, you know, cut down on the salt, because that's going to take care of it on its own. But a lot of people forget that, you know, if you're stressed, your blood pressure will go up. Maybe your body is actually not broken. Maybe you just need to meditate, or you just need to pray and just do something to help relieve the stress in your life. And, you know, for me, it's really important. I'm not some, you know, hippie medicine kind of person, but, you know, it's still important to recognize that there's a lot of natural things that will help your body heal, that isn't me just pumping you full of some kind of medication.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, I have a couple questions. One, when did you decide, or when did you feel called to be a doctor? And are some of the classes that they used to say they didn't have, are they there now, like nutrition, ethics, end of life issues, bedside manners? Are you taught any of that?
Yeah, so for your first question, in terms of when I felt called to medicine, so I kind of felt whenever I was in high school, I started really learning more about science and really loving science and the science classes that I took at Apollo Ridge. And I took an anatomy class, and I just thought it was so cool how anatomy worked, and just the human body in general, and it was neat to me. And you know, I got hurt playing sports, so I got to, you know, see the doctor a couple times, and my parents were really great in making sure that we always went to the physician and, you know, got our checkups and everything. So I was very familiar with the medical field, and I just kind of, you know, fell in love with it through sports and just learning more about medicine within sports, and, you know, spending a lot of time with my athletic trainer, especially at Apollo Ridge. And I realized I wanted to do something in medicine, especially. And then, you know, I had a lot of conversations with my parents, and just learned that, you know, with my skill set and just my goals in life, I knew that I wanted to be a leader in whatever practice I did and whatever job I did. And I knew that the physician was the leader of the care team. And, you know, everybody is truly important. You know, I don't want to ever minimize any person within the care team, because everyone has if everyone has the same interest in mind of getting the patient better, everyone serves, you know, a very specific purpose. But I realized that I could be a leader and use my influence as a physician to do a lot of things, not only for the patient, but also in the community. And so that's kind of when I fell in love with the idea of being a physician, and felt called to that. But in terms of your other question about the medical education, so what's really neat about Penn State, and one of the reasons that I really liked it here, is that we have a medical humanities program. So we actually learn the humanistic side of being a physician, not just the science, the science behind things and treatment protocols, but we have a lot of classes that teach us how to relate with patients. So we go through a full communications course where, we'll have actors that come in and they play the part of patients, and they put us through some really stressful situations. I had an actor who was yelling at me as a patient, and like, you had to learn how to deal with that. I had one that was just sobbing, and I had to learn how to deal with that. And, just a lot of situations that way. Whenever we, started practice, we weren't afraid of those kind of situations. So we did have that. We also had a course on medical ethics where we learned a lot about, a lot of ethical issues in medicine, but just how to navigate those and how to make sure that we utilize our values as a physician and cling on to those whenever we're faced with those ethical dilemmas. So we do have that course. And then I actually just finished up a course last week. It was my last class in medical school, and it was called Humans and Decision Making, where I spent a month reading since it was over Zoom, so I had to do a lot of reading, but we were talking about how patients make decisions, and kind of stepping back instead of looking at it as a physician, but looking at it from the eyes of a patient. So reading a lot of documents and a lot of books written by patients, especially cancer patients, and just what was going through their minds whenever they were going through treatment, and determining what to do next, and what they were thinking about whenever the doctors were talking to them. And so for the last month, I got a chance to kind of just view it from that standpoint, and how would I react in that situation as a patient, and by better knowing what I would do, I feel like after that I feel more confident as the physician who is sitting across from you. And so Penn State is fantastic at teaching that side. It's a very big requirement in our curriculum, and we are graded on making sure that whenever we are produced or whenever we graduate virtually, we are not only an inept physician in terms of somebody who can meet the criteria to pass our exams and to prescribe the right medicine, but also somebody who can sit beside you and hold your hand whenever you're going through a hard time, and someone that you can really open up to.
Good. Thank you.
And they're very open too about, so, you have to be very careful in terms of religion. I know that's, a big topic too, is, how much can you share with a patient in terms of, religious values. And I found that I've actually had the opportunity to actually speak with some patients about my faith. And it's been really great because I got to actually pray with a couple patients too before they had, whenever they were going through tough times. And so it's really cool that Penn State allowed me to do that as well. They were open to, they allow me to practice medicine the way that, the way that I want to practice medicine, and truly the way that, I know that I'm not here just to learn the X's and O's, but, to fulfill God's plan. So they let me do that, which was really cool.
Good.
Well, we got time for one more question if you have it.
Ben, I don't have a question, but I know I'm speaking on behalf of so many people, but we are so proud of you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Amen.
I still have time for one more question.
Well, going back to the COVID-19 area, what's your feeling about people's immunity? People are talking now about the fact that, we're all using all this hand sanitizer and washing our hands and staying away from everybody, and we're not sharing germs at all. And when we come out of this, it's going to be like a disaster. What's your feeling on that?
It will be.
So what I want to do.
So I wouldn't say disaster necessarily. So, I think everybody has seen now the idea, everyone knows about the idea of flattening the curve. And so the way that works is that as more and more cases occur, our bell curve goes up, and then eventually, we'll kind of hit a spot where we kind of hit a lull, and then it'll start coming back down, which is where we're at now. But whenever things open back up, people are going to be around each other, and cases are also going to go back up, because that's just the way that things work, right? If you had a room full of people with chickenpox and then you kept them there, but then you eventually let them go back into the daycare center, you're going to have more people with chickenpox. That's just the way it works. So you're going to see cases go back up, but the idea is to allow the plateau to happen and to allow the number of cases to start going down so that whenever we open back up, the next peak isn't as high. And so it's gonna happen. You know, people are gonna freak out and numbers are gonna go back up. But the point is that they don't go back up as high as they were, and that more importantly that they stay below the amount of cases so that our hospital systems aren't overwhelmed like they were the first time. So yeah, it's gonna go back up.
Will this affect anything other than the COVID-19? I mean, as far as our immunities, like, are we going to be more susceptible to other things because or just this situation?
It should, I mean, in this case, it should just be coronavirus. It should just be COVID. You know, because we went through this, we're not going to be more susceptible for other illnesses necessarily. But, you know, whenever we open back up, we're going to be, you know, you're going to see people get coronavirus again because they didn't get it the first time, and now they're around more people that have it. So I don't think you're going to see issues with other diseases necessarily, but you will with coronavirus again. But I don't want to scare you. It shouldn't. The point of this is so it's not as bad as it was the first time.
Okay. Will we be more susceptible to all viral things though? Do you think?
I don't believe so. You know, the thing about this is that it's kind of I hate to say fluke, but the reason that this is as bad as it is it's something that none of our bodies have ever seen before. Mm-hmm. You know, we have a flu epidemic every year, right? You know, every year, a ton of people, millions of people get the flu. You know, some people die, some people recover, and then flu season ends and we all go outside and we stop caring about the flu, and then it all starts again. But the thing about coronavirus is that we've never seen it before. So none of our bodies were prepared to fight it. But all of our bodies have seen all the other things that we know about, right? You know, we've all been exposed to the flu, whether you've had it or not, you've been exposed to it by now. And you should still get your flu shot just to make sure. And, you know, we've all been, you know, vaccinated, hopefully, against those other things. So it's really the new things are the ones that we're more at risk for. And at this point, you know, coronavirus is the only new thing that we know about. There could be something that's lurking, but, you know, I don't anticipate it. I think this is just something that we're going to see. And, you know, realistically speaking, this could turn into an annual thing. But you know, once we get a vaccine, it could just be an annual thing, just like the flu. And a lot of us really don't care about that the way that we should anyway. So I think that, you know, it's more about just getting it under control, and then you'll see where it goes from there. But don't buy any tickets to concerts or baseball games this summer.
And don't lick the escalator rail.
Oh, yeah. It's so
and please don't inject yourself or drink Clorox.
Yes. 1 year I did rub my hand on an escalator and then licked it, and I got every disease you could have had that week. It was the worst week I've ever had. I learned my lesson. So,
ask him why he did that. Ask him why.
You see,
because someone dared me.
My motto in life is that if you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes.
That's right. Amen,
I think
brother.
That was your stupid prize.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, he always teased me that I was a big germaphobe. I wouldn't touch the escalator. I wouldn't touch this. I wouldn't touch that. So that's why he did that, just to prove that. And I know God, I was like, thank you, God. I felt bad for him, but I was like, you deserve that?
I wouldn't.
Oh.
No, it's some people just, you know, you pick your poison realistically.
Our family, we say there's no sense of being stupid if you don't know.
So, you can't fix stupid. So
right, you can't. That's true. We've tried for a long time. So.
Yeah.
That might have put you in line for a Darwin Award.
It might have. Oh, I felt like it was going to. I'll tell you.
You're probably immune to the coronavirus now because of it.
Yeah, I should get tested. I had it 5 years ago before they knew what it was.
If you tell our president that worked for you, it'll probably be on tomorrow's task.
Yeah, probably. So.
Hey, but don't make too much fun of the president. Bob's grandmother used to spray Lysol down her throat when she had a sore throat. So.
And it probably worked.
And it did.
And she
swore
lived
by
to
it.
be old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's insane.
He lived a long,
It's
long life.
not that crazy of an idea to be realistic. It's just it's
Just
all a
really
matter of quantity.
That's right.
Hey, don't
Because-
lose your license the week after you get it.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Well,
I
Ben,
remember my dad didn't want to take his heparin because it was rat poison.
yeah.
Yeah.
So one last thing, Ben. I've got this mole right here. I want you to take a look at it.
I'll cut it out.
TMI.
I'm kidding. So Ben, thank you so much for your time. It's been really enjoyable and informative, and it's just encouraging you in your faith and moving into this field that God's called you to, and fulfilling that purpose. And so you've already done great things, and you'll do more. And we want you to know we're praying for you, and we love you and appreciate you. And hey, if you need to move and you need help, call Pastor Lee. No, I'd help you too if you need it. So you got help if you need it. All right.
Oh, thanks.
I've got a weak mind and a strong back. So
Yeah.
That's all you
I'm
need.
really surprised, Ben, that you didn't go into psychiatry after being raised in the North Apollo.
Oh, I need to see a psychiatrist. I think that's how I like it.
Yeah.
all right. So let me have a word of prayer, and I'll give you a few minutes to do whatever you want to do here after that. And you can bail, you can talk, whatever you want to do. Let me pray. Our Heavenly Father, I thank you for Ben. And I thank you for him willing to just share his faith and his journey, answer some questions, and just shed some light on some different information. But Lord, I pray for him and his wife as they make this transition back to this area. I pray that your hand would be upon them, as we already know it is, and that you'll work out every detail that needs to be worked out as they make that transition. And we just pray for his continued learning, and we would pray for all of those that will come into his care. And we're grateful that you raise up young men like Ben in these fields. And so just we thank you for Deb and Jim as well, and just pouring their lives out into their children and to all of us as well. This was a good night, Lord, and we thank you for moments like this, in times like this, and we just cherish them. So we ask tonight that we'll be able to rest in your presence and wake to tomorrow knowing that it's a new day full of new mercies that you have for us. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Ben, any final words before you bail?
I don't think so.
Well,
You guys stay safe and stay away from each other.
yeah, well, some of these I don't mind doing that.
Stairs and he's downstairs.
Yeah, so just feel free, everyone. This is lobby time, so feel like chatting, feel like leaving, do what you want to do. It's your time, your dime and your time. So.
And I just wanted to say God bless you and thank you for being the person you are.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
We're happy to claim you, Ben.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I'm happy to put your name on it, so.
Hey, Ben, we're really proud of you.
Thank you.
Hey, Barb and Dave, thank you for lunch today.
Yes.
We used your gift certificate today.
Oh, okay. Oh, man. Maybe, Ben, maybe you need to go into senior medicine. I think I need it.
Man.
Yes, you're
Here
very
we
welcome.
go. Take Pastor Bob straight to the loony bin.
Yeah.
What?
Jim Psych has your name on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
They wouldn't keep him. They'd
That's right.
discharge them.
Hey, I did see Bud Seedham and Lucy on here earlier, and Bud goes in tomorrow for bone marrow test, biopsy. So be praying for Bud tomorrow as well. And
that's in the morning, isn't it, Bob?
I don't know. I just know it's tomorrow. So
Yeah, I believe in the morning.
Yeah. But if we get information and he allows us to share, we'll definitely do that.
And Lucy can't go in with them, so she has to wait in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's
So it's-
crazy.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little tough on her too.
Yeah.
Is anyone going with her, Barb?
No, I asked her if I could go with her, and she said she'd be fine. She said she just sits in the car and reads.
Well, that's her neck of the woods. She worked there for years.
Yeah,
Right there
right there.
in an office.
Oh,
Also, I don't know if everybody saw too about Marcia Guthrie's son-in-law.
Yes.
He has the COVID, so the coronavirus. So he's, of course, dealing with it. He is doing okay. Just has a bad cough. He's at home, but now all the rest of them have to maintain the quarantine to make sure the two kids and Emily don't have it. So, and they live in New Jersey, I think, or is it Maryland?
Maryland.
Anyways, they live